Question 21 wants us to adjust the sentence. The pattern box observed in 2012 may repeat itself again with harmful effects on the Arctic ecosystem. So, like always, we want to make sure we have the most concise sentence we can have that preserves meaning. And we can see here that with most of these answer choices, for example, no change, the again is actually redundant with the repeat we have earlier here. So then if we take out this again and only have repeat itself, which is answer choice B, then the sentence still flows well while preserving meaning and not being redundant. So we have the pattern box observed in 2012 may repeat itself with harmful effects on the Arctic ecosystem. So that still sounds pretty great. Now, what about these other ones? Well, even looking at them, I can see that they're more wordy, and let's test it out in this sentence. The pattern box observed in 2012 may repeat itself with damage and harmful effects on the Arctic ecosystem. Well, we can see here that damage and Arctic and harmful effects are essentially the same thing, so that's unnecessarily redundant. And now let's see D. The pattern box observed in 2012 may repeat itself possibly with harmful effects on the Arctic ecosystem. Well, what we want to show is that Box wants to go there because he does think that the damage will be pretty substantial. So if we have the possibly, then that just adds doubt, which is unnecessary and doesn't add to our meaning. So we know that the best choice is answer B. So question 22 wants us to see where sentence 4 would be best logically placed. So let's read sentence 4. Box is currently organizing an expedition to gather this crucial information. So we know wherever we put the sentence, we need to know what this crucial information is before we have sentence 4. Sentence 5 mentions just exactly what type of information he needs and the method he can use to gather it. So we can then find out or know that sentence 4 would logically follow sentence 5. And it would go before sentence 6 because sentence 6 mentions his expedition and sentence 4 is where he organized the expedition. So after sentence 5 is where sentence 4 would most logically go, because then we can find out what the crucial information is, and then he organizes his expedition. Question 23 asks us to revise the sentence. The novelty of this comfortable work-from-home life, however, soon got worn off quickly. So, as always, we want to choose the most concise answer choice that doesn't detract from the meaning and is grammatically correct. And we can already see here, soon got worn off quickly is pretty wordy and redundant because soon and quickly basically add the same meaning to the sentence. And let's look through our other answer choices. Was promptly worn, promptly wore, and wore. Already here we see that the shortest answer choice is D, wore, and in comparison with B and C with the words promptly, if we add that to the sentence, for example, was promptly worn, we would say, however, was promptly worn off quickly, the promptly and the quickly are also redundant. So in this case, answer D, wore, is the best choice. Question 24 wants us to modify, having become frustrated trying to solve difficult problems, no colleagues were nearby to share ideas. Okay, so for this part of the sentence, we know that we want the having become frustrated to be associated with whatever is in the next clause. So whatever subject is in this part after the comma is the thing that's having become frustrated. So we can see that it doesn't make sense if we have the no colleagues that are frustrated trying to solve difficult problems. And let's look through the answer choices. So we want the subject to be the one that's having become frustrated. So were the colleagues frustrated? Well, no. Were the ideas frustrated? No, that doesn't make sense. Was the writer of this paragraph frustrated? Yes. We can see here it makes sense. Having become frustrated trying to solve difficult problems, I missed having colleagues nearby to consult. And that goes along with the rest of most of the meaning of this paragraph, which concentrates on the author of the paragraph. So then the best answer choice would be D, because the writer is the subject of having become frustrated trying to solve difficult problems. Question 25 wants us to revise. It was during this time that I read an article into co-working spaces. So in this case, we have use of the wrong preposition. So you can read into something, but you don't read an article into something. You read an article about co-working spaces. So in that case, the answer choice would be B. So you don't read an article upon co-working spaces or read an article for co-working spaces. In this case, the article is describing the spaces, so it's talking about it. Question 26 wants us to look at the spaces are usually stocked with standard office equipment, such as photocopiers, printers, and fax machines. So already from reading it, it seems pretty normal, but let's look at our possible fixes. So we can see that the possible fixes here all include changing whether or not the sentence has a colon right here after the such as. And we can see right here that adding this colon would make the sentence not flow as well. So it would be like the spaces are usually stocked with standard office equipment, such as photocopiers, printers, and fax machines. So right here, as it already flows well, the colon would be unnecessary because when we have such as to describe something, all we need is a comma preceding it. So then the best answer choice would just be no change. Question 27 looks at, in these locations, however, the spaces often include small meeting areas and larger rooms for hosting presentations. So this sentence right here, it doesn't make sense for this however to be placed because this sentence is actually adding on to what we were talking about in the previous sentence about the equipment. It's not going against what we were talking about. So we would want something that's additive. And now let's look through our answer choices, in addition to equipment, for these reasons, and likewise. So if we're talking about adding on these features as well, then we want something that would be similar to in addition to the equipment, and that's answer choice B. So number 28 wants us to consider whether or not the writer should delete the underlined sentence. So let's take a look at the sentence. Okay, it says the cost of launching a new co-working business in the United States is estimated to be approximately $58,000. So let's first take a look at if this matches the other information in our paragraph. So let's see, the beginning, it explains the co-working spaces, and then it says what equipment is in the co-working spaces. So it doesn't really make much sense to add on something about the cost of the co-working spaces, at least not in this paragraph that's just talking about the equipment. Of course, equipment does cost a certain amount, but that's not what this paragraph really is focusing on. So the focus is on this equipment and what is offered in those spaces. So we should delete this part because it doesn't match what else we were talking about. So let's look through the answer choices so we can automatically take out the ones that say kept. And we have two answer choices that want to delete the sentence. So let's read them. C, deleted because it blurs the paragraph's main focus with a loosely related detail, and D, deleted because it repeats information that has been provided in an earlier paragraph. Well, this information about the cost of a co-working business has never been mentioned before, so we can already know that it doesn't repeat information. So then our only answer choice left is C. Number 29 is a long one. It says, at this point, the writer wants to add specific information that supports the main topic of the paragraph. And then we're given a chart and asked, which choice most effectively completes the sentence with relevant and accurate information based on the graph above? So let's take a look at this section. It says, what most caught my interest, though, was a quotation from someone who described co-working spaces as melting pots of creativity. The article refers to a 2012 survey in which 64% of respondents noted that co-working spaces prevented them from completing tasks in a given time. Well, okay, it doesn't make sense when you're describing them as melting pots of creativity, which mean that they're a good space for creativity to flow, and then mention that the spaces prevent them from completing tasks. So let's take a look at our chart and see which one would make sense based on the sentence that we have before the one we want to fix. So if they want to focus on melting pots of creativity, let's look at this chart. Oh, and I see right here that there's a slot for creativity. So that seems like something that's pretty substantial. 71% reported a positive impact of creativity. So we probably want to include that in our answer. So we can see here that answer choice B does mention the creativity that is referred to in the beginning of this paragraph. So that would be most relevant and accurate based on the graph above. Question 30 wants us to revise. The article goes on to suggest that the most valuable resources provided by co-working spaces are actually the people whom use them. Okay, so let's look at our answer choices. Whom uses, who uses, and who use. So we want to use the correct relative pronoun and verb to complete our sentence. And the use of whom is incorrect in this case because whom is used to represent objects, whereas the pronoun who would be correct to describe the people, which we are talking about in this sentence. Okay, now that we know we need to use who, we need to use the correct verb as well. So we know that people is multiple, not singular. So then what would make sense for a verb that follows a multiple subject? Well, that would be who use. So that would be actually the people who use them, not who uses, which would be for a singular subject. So we know that the answer choice must be D. 31 asks, the writer wants to add the following sentence to the paragraph. After filling out a simple registration form and taking a quick tour of the facility, I took a seat at a table and got right to work on my laptop. The best placement for this sentence is immediately, so our answer choices have to do with sentences 1, 2, and 3. So let's take a look at those sentences and kind of summarize them and see where we can add this one. So the main idea of this sentence is that the author took a tour and then it gets to work at a table. Okay, so the first sentence is the author deciding to try co-working space. Then sentence 2 is the author choosing a facility. And then sentence 3, more people appearing throughout the morning. Okay, so there already seems to be an inconsistency between sentences 2 and 3 because he chooses a facility, but then more people appear. So we missed the part where the author actually gets the facility. And we know that our sentence here is the author touring this facility and then sitting at a table. So it makes sense that, in this section between 2 and 3 where we have missing information, we would place the author arriving at the facility and then getting to work. So the best placement would be after sentence 2, which is answer C. 32 looks at, over time, I've gotten to know several of my co-working colleagues, another website developer, a graphic designer, a freelance writer, and several mobile app coders. Okay, so we see here at 32, after the colon, there's a list of co-working colleagues he has. So usually when you're enumerating a list, you start it off with a colon, and the colleagues that he lists are mentioned after the colon. So everything seems to be right here, and let's look at the fixes. Colleagues with a semicolon, colleagues with a comma, and just colleagues. So we know it wouldn't be a semicolon because what would follow from the semicolon isn't an independent clause. So we can take that out. And then adding just a comma doesn't make sense because we have this list afterwards. And when you're enumerating a list, just using a comma wouldn't make sense because it would create another clause. And then with no punctuation, it also would not make sense with the flow of the sentence. I've gotten to know some of my co-working colleagues, another website developer, a graphic designer, and there would just be a jump between colleagues and another website developer. So that doesn't grammatically make sense. So then we know that there must be no change made to the sentence. Question 33 wants us to look at, even those of us who work in disparate fields are able to share advice and help each other brainstorm. So let's look through our answer choices. We have give some wisdom, proclaim our opinions, and opine. So at the onset, C and D, proclaim our opinions, and opine have the same meaning. So if we have two answer choices that are similar, then we can cross both of them out because the test wouldn't make you choose between two very similar answer choices. And then B, give some wisdom, is not grammatically correct, so we can also cross that out. So then our only remaining option is A, no change, which makes sense with what the author is saying because the author wants to say that even people who have different jobs can share advice and help each other with the different ideas they have in those fields.
Read through the portion that the question is referring to in your mind, then make changes that you think are reasonable first, and then look at the answer choices. When you need to revise underlined portions or certain words, choose the most concise and non-repetitive answer that you still believe is grammatically correct. Also, for answer choices that seem very, very similar, for example, what word to place at the beginning of the sentence, and there are similar answer choices, you can eliminate both answer choices that are similar. For matching subjects with verbs, make sure you know what the subject is and whether it is plural or singular. And for questions that have to do with deleting, adding, or ordering sentences, first summarize the main ideas of each sentence and then decide the corresponding order or whether or not the sentence is necessary. Lastly, for prepositions, choose the answer that sounds right based on your grammatical knowledge and your first read through of the sentence.